Hello and welcome everybody to this event tonight with artist Jaime Black. We are going to do an artist talk, or Jaime will be doing an artist talk this evening. Welcome everyone. My name is Wendy Peart and I am one of the curators at Dunlop Art Gallery in Regina, Saskatchewan. Welcome to our online event. First of all, before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that you have the option of adding a question or a comment into the chat field if you are on YouTube or on Facebook, because we can address your questions and comments through the session today. I'm going to introduce Jaime in a moment, but before we get going, I just want to do a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that Dunlop Art Gallery and myself currently are situated on Treaty 4 territory, the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. Through this land acknowledgement, I extend my intentions and efforts to continually support Indigenous communities and learn from them, such as land-based respect, knowledge, and honor systems. And through my work, such as at the Dunlop Art Gallery, I hope to bring communities together through learning and education opportunities so that we can grow deeper relationships with one another and respect for cultures other than our own. I also want to just say that events such as Jaime's talk tonight is tied with the Regina Public Library commitment to the TRC, Truth and Reconciliation. The Regina Public Library have many programs, especially this month with Indigenous History Month, that are tied to these learnings. So some of the programs that are offered, such as the Indigenous Voices reading list. You can check out the reconciliation page on the RPL website, and it will list many of the Indigenous programs, and again, especially this month of June. Please note, I already said you can add your comments or questions. I just wanted to say that again. Now I'm going to introduce Jaime before I let her take over. Jaime Black is a Winnipeg-based multidisciplinary artist of mixed Anishinaabe and European descent. Black's art practice engages in themes of memory, identity, place, and resistance, and is grounded in an understanding of the body and land as resources of cultural and spiritual knowledge. I want to also make a special note that Regina Public Library and Dunlop Art Gallery just recently purchased 3 of Jaime's REDress photographs, which will be on display at Albert Branch in the coming months. Now I would like to let Jaime go forth and do her talk, and we look forward to having some chat with our audience throughout the evening.
Awesome. Thanks, Wendy. Hello, everybody. We've all become radio hosts here, it seems like. We're running our own podcasts at all times. So thanks a lot for joining us online. It's unfortunate we couldn't meet in person. Hopefully we can do that again soon. So yes, I'm coming to you guys from Winnipeg, Manitoba right now, and my family is from this area, between here and the Thunder Bay area. We're Métis, Anishinaabe, probably Cree in there somewhere too, as well as European kind of descent. So that's where I'm coming from. And the land that I work on and live on here in Manitoba is really important to me because of that family connection to this land. And my family's been traveling between Thunder Bay and Winnipeg for years now, and for hundreds of years even. And I'm learning more and more about my history all the time. I very recently found out that a family member of mine, and this is of course family stories, so this, it hasn't been fact checked, but my auntie had said that someone in my family had actually had a trap line down Portage Avenue. I've also found out that we had scrip land in this area given to us which is, it's a whole other story. But anyway, so we basically got land because we were Métis, and that land was taken away from us. So it's this land is there's a lot of history here, and there's a lot of stories here. And so I feel really connected to this land, and I feel like I'm discovering new things about myself by being on this land and making art in this space. A lot of my work has traveled to many different places, but this land definitely informs my practice quite a bit, and it's really a search for identity and meaning through the land that my work kind of derives from. So I just wanted to start with that, but I have a slideshow here for you guys of a bunch of works, and I'm starting out with the REDress project, which I think everybody knows by now about this work. I started this work about 10 years ago, and I've been traveling all across Canada and beyond with red dresses to commemorate and also to draw attention to violence against Indigenous women and girls, but also to incite action and create change through art. And that's really something that I've found through doing this project is possible as an artist, is to really incite change in the people and connect to people on an emotional and a spiritual level that allows them to want to change and react and take action to create justice in our society. So art has really become a vehicle of creating change, social change, and creating space for social justice in our communities, I think. And, I think that the first artists, our work was always spiritual. It was always connected to community. And I think as an artist, I want to kind of maintain those threads and those connections and use the work to better the community, to educate people, and to create change. So you'll see here a red dress. This is actually a place out by where I grew up, which is outside of Winnipeg, not too far outside of Winnipeg. And I placed a dress out there, and I've placed these dresses in many different places, and it's just really powerful to bring the spirits and the energy of these dresses to different spaces and to connect them with the land. I think that the loss of that interconnection between Indigenous communities and their land is the kind of reason for a lot of the trauma that we have experienced, and a lot of the erasure of identity and culture that we have experienced as Indigenous people has been that disconnection from the land. So in my work, I'm really trying to reconnect and think about what that means to reconnect to the land and reconnect to these spaces, and to really develop a patient and intimate relationship with the landscapes that we're in. And so it's not just about seeing a pretty thing, but it's really about developing a relationship with a space. And I feel like this location where I put the dress is really important to me, because I've been visiting that space for many, many years. And I think that reconnecting is part of how I'm able to kind of put back together parts of my identity that I have lost is through that reconnection to these landscapes. And of course, I talk about the Red Dress project quite a bit, so I'm kind of going on an art side of it and thinking in that direction right now. But this work as well has just become such a powerful example of how art can really make great change. And this work has traveled in so many different places and communities. About 5 years ago, I actually opened it up to the community outside of myself, communities everywhere, to participate and show their solidarity with Indigenous women and girls and their families by putting up red dresses in different locations where they were. So that resulted in communities really creating their own red dress installations, really bringing awareness in their own communities and taking action and taking on this project and really allowing it to grow beyond what I could do as a single artist myself. And I really think that's part of the power of this work, is community has really taken it and taken care of it and shared it and allowed it to grow beyond what I could do myself. You can switch the slide, please. This sounds awkward. Yeah, so this is actually the first installation of the REDress project, the large-scale installation of the REDress project in either 2009 or 2010. There's debate about that. I'm trying to keep track of this stuff, but it's hard. But this is at the University of Winnipeg here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I actually worked with the Department of Women and Gender Studies to put up this installation, and I had actually come to them with this idea. The work hadn't really been shown anywhere before. I was just thinking about it and feeling like it was something I needed to do, and they really supported me and gave me sort of a framework for being able to do this work for 10 years afterwards, often in collaboration with Indigenous studies or gender studies departments in different universities across Canada. So throughout this installation, we gathered about 100 red dresses for this installation within a couple of months, and they were just donated by the student body. And, at the outset of this project, I was just amazed at the amount of donations that I got. Once the word kind of spread, I got up to 300 dresses in the first year of beginning this project as donations. And they came from far and wide. And I really feel like I opened a door, created a space by bringing in this work for people to show their support. And I think otherwise they're not really certain what to do or how to kind of support families and women through these things or make change. And it really showed me that there's a lot of solidarity in our communities far and wide, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, that want to see change happen. And so that was a really amazing thing about this project. Okay, you can switch her. Thanks, Wendy. Wendy's behind the scenes. She's changing the slides for me. This is just another angle of that same installation at U of Winnipeg. And, it was really, really powerful actually walking through this, gambit of red dresses. And every single time I put up these dresses, I really feel like we're calling in the energy of, our ancestors, but also the women who have gone missing and have endured violence. And I really feel the presence of those women every single time I put up these dresses. And I think that, everybody else does as well. And that's really the power of this work, that you can't ignore what's going on, and you can't ignore that presence, even though it's marking an absence. I think there's a real strength and power in these dresses that can't be ignored. You can switch it, please. Thanks. So after quite a while of doing the REDress project, I began thinking about, whether it was a disservice or not to, be presenting Indigenous women as victims regularly. And so, of course, there is a serious history of colonization and violence against Indigenous women and girls in this country from the outset of, when settlers came to Canada. But I really wanted to think about what we were as Indigenous women outside of this violence, outside of the reach of colonization, the erasure of our culture. There's more to it than that, and there's more to us than that. And I was starting to think about where do we gain our power? What happens if we step into the red dress? What happens if we're present instead of absent? Where are we present instead of absent? And, I started looking at the way I was doing this work in a completely different way at that time. And, we were gathering together as Indigenous women and teams of Indigenous women to put together these installations, and also non-Indigenous women, but really gathering communities of women together, and men as well. But often I was working with only women. And, we were all doing really amazing work in our communities. We were all publishing. We were, women were professors, or they're writing, or they're creating theater, or they're creating art, or, and I was working with these really powerful women who were really making a lot of change in their communities. And I really wanted that to be part of the story that was told along with these dresses as well, that we are powerful. And I think that, I can say that, and it can sound trite, like, oh, we're so, like girl power or whatever. But I really think that Indigenous women are actually at the center of our communities, and we have been since time immemorial. And we are the ones who maintain culture, who keep communities together, who keep the balance. Indigenous people lived on this land for thousands of years in more or less balance with the land and each other. How do we continue doing that? How did that happen? And I think that is the strength of Indigenous women and Indigenous matriarchies that allowed that balance to exist. And since the onset of colonization, that balance has been skewed. And I really, really believe that it's us stepping back into our power and changing the value systems that we live within to value people, human life, health of ourselves and the land, that will make the biggest change and impact. So I kind of went off on a tangent there, but this image, like it really was a turning point in the work, in thinking about the strength and the power of going back to these matriarchal teachings, which I didn't grow up with. I didn't know there were matriarchies at all. I never learned that. But there were matriarchies here. And it's likely my family was part of that, right? And when we relearn those things, we relearn where our power comes from. And I feel like the land, I really feel like the land holds memory as well. So I'm thinking about that when I'm making these reconnections. And so these things we've kind of forgotten through settler colonialism, I think can be not reimagined, but connected to once again, because the land still holds that memory and that knowledge. And as well in this photo, I'm moving and dancing, and so that element of dance and like being in the body and reconnecting with the body, and the body reconnecting with the land, it's a powerful form of resistance to to control, to forgetting who we are. It's resisting those things and really re-embodying that power that we held for thousands of years on this land. Okay, you can switch here. I feel like this image is like definitely really an example of that power. And we think of the dresses, and I think a lot of people look at the dresses and they just feel they feel sadness, which yes, of course. But I think for me, at this point now, after doing this work for a long time, I see strength, and I see women warriors standing up to protect the land, to protect each other, to reconnect these cultures, to reconnect to one another. And I really see an army of red dresses standing with us as we move towards a more just world and reconnect with those ways that bring us back into balance. And this is just, I feel like this is just evidence of the power of these dresses and standing up to, the colonial exploitation of our land, of our women. So I feel like that work has really become, really a pivotal force in standing up to these systems that have tried to silence us for so long. Okay, you can switch. Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, so again, like this work that I'm doing right now is, I think, like, it's come to a point where it's really become, it's about me reconnecting with the memory of the land. And I think that's what this image is. It's that stone remembers. It remembers the time when things were not as they are right now. It remembers the time before colonization, because that time lasted much, much longer than the time of colonialism. So, you know, that stone has that memory in it. And so in this work, I'm really kind of on a personal journey of reconnecting to identity and reconnecting to that strength that we hold within us, that's been forgotten, and really trying to rekindle that. And so for me in this image, I'm really reconnecting with the rock in a very physical way. And you know, using the body to make that interconnection and to create that relationship between myself and the knowledge that that rock still holds. Okay, you can switch. Yeah, and then I also am always kind of working with the idea of absence and presence, and I'm very interested in that. And I think of absence and presence also as like physical presence, but also we have spiritual presence as well. And so I think on some level, like the dresses are like a spiritual presence. I feel like this mark on the rock could be a spiritual presence, and it could almost be like, instead of the mark being left by a physical person, it could be the ancestors that are in that rock coming up out of that rock into this physical plane. And so it's like kind of calling on that spiritual essence of that's being held in that rock by making that connection. Okay, you can switch that one. Thanks, Wendy. I'm really quiet. I feel like saying switch like makes it awkward for the talk, but yeah, so anyway, this is the same, pardon me, this is the same series. And yeah, I'm just like really exploring that interconnection of the spirit, the body, the land, and that ancestral knowledge that's held in the land. This spot is very close to a spot in Manitoba called Manitowabe, and there's a petroform site in this area, very close to this spot. And the petroforms are rock formations. So they're made by piling rocks in different shapes. So I think there are 8,000 to 10,000 year old rock formations created by the Anishinaabe and Cree in this area. And the story is that actually the creation story in this area is that Sky Woman actually came from the stars, the first woman, and she fell to the land in that place. So I've been spending a lot of years out there with different elders, learning about the stories of that place, and reconnecting to that land and those histories and those traditional stories that exist in that space. And so I'm very interested in protecting that land and also sharing that knowledge with others. And I think that, you know, it's an exploration of myself, but I also feel like through exploring that, I'm healing. And I feel like that process of healing is something that we as, you know, the elders and myself as artists can share with others and create this reconnecting to ourselves and our inner selves and our culture and our community and our traditions in a way that will be very healing for others as well. And that's really kind of the focus of my work, is really kind of working towards making those reconnections so that we can begin to understand and remember who we were before the onset of colonization. You can move to the next one, please. So this is a recent work that I did. Again, it's really about the connection between the body and the land. And quite a few years ago, I think in 2017, it's quite a few years ago now, I was working with a couple of Indigenous artists here in Winnipeg, and we, on a project called Shards with Gallery 1CO3. You guys should look it up because we did a performance and some other interesting stuff, and they have really good archived footage of that, but I can share that with you guys at the end of the talk. So for the Shards project, we actually got to work with museums in this area and look at the actual pottery shards, which there are a lot of all around Winnipeg and all around the waterways, left by the people who were here like 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. So, we got to it was really amazing. We got to put our fingerprint on the fingerprint of someone who made something, 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. So like the power of that, it's pretty amazing. And, the making of pottery and pots was done at every different location people moved to. So often people would move with the seasons for hunting or different reasons. And what I heard is women were often the ones who would make the pots. And so they would gather clay from the area they were in, and they would create the pots for cooking. And so this really was women's work 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. So women were the ones creating these vessels. And so it's really reconnecting to those women. Just give me a half a second. Yeah. I'm live on video. You don't want to walk by here. My son is here. He's trying not to bug me, but he's only a little bit bugging me.
How much longer?
A little bit longer, baby.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's his bedtime, so he's a little fussy. But yeah, so yeah, this work with the clay was really, really important to me. And when we were doing that clay work, I was thinking about clay at that time as not just making the vessels and the physical kind of nature of it, but also the spiritual nature of it. And during that time, I had the privilege of going to a clay ceremony. And during that ceremony, and I don't know much about it, I've only been to one, so I'm not going to say I know everything about it by any stretch, but everybody at the ceremony was painted on their face with clay. And to me, that really was, it was a real physical connection and spiritual connection to the land. And it felt to me like almost like a marriage to the land. And so it was sort of like I thought of it as a vow almost, like I will take care of you if you take care of me, and just that reciprocal relationship, solidifying that relationship and making that relationship to the land. And so I was thinking about that when we were doing this project as well. And again, this piece that we're looking at here, this is a performance I did in a gallery. Unfortunately, I had to videotape it because no one could come watch it, but yeah, it was sort of a continuation of that clay ceremony of connecting the land to the body by painting the body with clay. I didn't actually use clay from my area, which I ideally in this scenario would have, but this was in January, so I wasn't long-sighted enough to gather clay beforehand. But yeah, it's really like about making that interconnection. And a friend of mine who's a curator actually saw this, and she said it looks like the spirits of the ancestors are coming out of the walls. So it just seems really, really powerful to me. And these are just images of my own body against the wall. But they really start to represent these kind of spiritual presences in this space. And they really kind of take up that space in a powerful way. And it really felt like ceremony walking into this room. Yeah, and in the middle there is a pot, and it's a recreation of the kind of pottery that was made in this area by the Anishinaabe and Cree. I could keep talking because Wendy, I don't know if you want to do some Do I have another slide? Oh, just more of those. Oh yeah, there's a couple more actually, I forgot. You can carry on. You can go past that one too. Yeah. So this is also these are also newer works. Can you go back one, Wendy, please? Thank you, sorry. Yeah, so this is a newer work as well. I made this last summer, and so I was working with this white dress for quite a long time, and I still haven't grappled with exactly what it means. I mean, a lot of time my work sort of precedes my cognitive understanding of what it is, and it's often almost like a precursor or a fortune teller in my life. So, you know, very honestly, like I've made work around birthing and things like that before and then found out I was pregnant like 6 months later. So it's like this work sort of leads me to where I'm going, and I don't always know what what my work is going to teach me as I make it, but I just feel compelled to do it. And so this work itself is sort of, I feel like it's in its infancy in how I understand it, but I really think it's really powerful and beautiful and spiritual. And I feel like this is almost like a spiritual presence, this dress in the water. And there are stories of Star Woman coming down to the earth, and she was wearing a white dress. So this was kind of some of the stories that were around me while I was making this work as well. As well as water that the dress is submerged in is actually in the White Shell area around the petroform site, which I've visited for many, many years. And so that water is really, I feel like it's very sacred water. And, people come down there and drum and do ceremony a lot. And it's a very sacred place. And so, I was at this place just visiting, putting down tobacco and just being in that place. And I just felt compelled to put this dress in there, and it just made these absolutely beautiful images. And we'll see where they lead me. You can go to the next one, please. Yeah, and so I also you'll notice the last one and this one as well is I'm really interested right now in working in and with water. There's just, artistically and visually, there's just so much there. But I also think of water as, our emotional space and our emotional realm, and also thinking about, politically protecting our water and what does that mean, and the memory that water holds as well, and the stories that the water holds, and also the potential for water to heal us. And so I think that, the direction my work is taking right now is really going in a direction of healing, and what does it look like to heal, and how do we do that for ourselves? And for me personally, and I'm sure for many people, there's just obviously like a very healing power to water. And so I'm really interested this summer. I'm just gonna do some ceremony and connect with a lot of lakes by just completely submerging myself in them. And I really want to make some work surrounding that process as well. I think I'm gonna stop talking there. I don't know how long I've talked, but I'm happy to take questions from you, Wendy, or others.
I don't have any questions from the comments field, but I just want to remind everyone that you can still add to that as we go. I thought I was taking some notes of things that you were saying that I thought that really stuck out for me. So I'm just going to go through and ask maybe a couple questions from them. Maybe that will spark some thoughts. One of the questions, you kind of just answered it, was like, what's next? And you did talk about this project you want to do with the lakes and how you're moving towards the water as a medium for, I thought it was really interesting. You were saying how the water is like an emotional and a political space, which is a really interesting, I'm going to use the terrible word just juxtaposition, but I think it's a really funny little mix of two things. But that really kind of struck a chord for me when you said that, because yes, water is political. It's the thing that we need to protect, that Indigenous communities are currently very actively protecting, because as you know, those our natural water systems are being threatened by large industry and whatnot, and it's being commodified. So I think that is really interesting. I think this last image is very evocative. I as a art person, I really want to see more too. I really like that image. I really, really like, of course, as you know, we really, really appreciate the red dress work and your white dress work. And I'm very curious about, you talked about how the absence and the presence, again, it's another kind of duality, which actually, it kind of makes sense. One is not without the other, right? They're
of course,
together, right? But you also have one image of yourself, I believe it's yourself in the dress, during an act, a dance or a ceremony of sort. Can you tell me a little bit about that particular image? Maybe I'll go back to it just so we have it back.
Yeah, that would be nice.
And again, you can share what you feel like sharing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm good. I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I feel like I sort of explained where I was kind of going with this, and it was just like about being present within this instead of being absent. And I was thinking about what that meant, and also kind of reclaiming that strength and power. What does that look like? And I feel like it looks like that. That's what it looks like. And that image, like, it was such an interesting, like, I just went out and shot that myself with a tripod and a timer, and it was wild. But again, that's a spot I've been visiting since I was very young, and it just feels really special to me now. And I'd been shooting all day actually, and that was the last image I took. I probably took like 200 images, but like none of them were amazing, but that was the one. And it wasn't, I mean, I guess like in a way, like all this work is ceremony. Like I feel like art is ceremony, and I feel like because it's connecting to a plane of our existence that's not only material. It's like beyond that, and it's more nuanced than that. And so this wasn't particularly a ceremony as you would think of them, but I feel like my art itself is always me kind of embodying and sort of doing ceremony in my own way. Just I call it, for short form, doing weird stuff in the bush. Like
yeah.
I can go out in the bush, do weird stuff. I'll be back.
The power of that, right? I just do want to bring in a comment that was mentioned. I can't read the person's name, but again, just a comment about how the water is so healing, and the white dress is very emotional. So thank you for that. Jamie, do you have any response to that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, those works, like, they're still, yeah, like I said, they're sort of, I guess, like, I'm not in the space to articulate them yet, I feel like, but there's so much there. Like, I can feel it. I can feel that about them. But yeah, there's something, I feel like something is starting there though. Like, I feel like it's, like a new start, or something new is coming. And I feel like this is just the precursor to that. And it feels definitely like a shift in my work.
I think you work from a very strong, emotionally intelligent place, and that is a really strong intellectual capacity, and to also be self-aware of that. I don't know, like, as an artist, having that self-awareness, that you said something about how your you don't have a cognitive understanding until later. But you know to trust that impulse, and that you
Yeah.
will understand it. You will be able to put maybe the language around what the meaning is. I think that's a really powerful force as an artist and as a woman, and that it's really great to see you trust in that and follow those impulses.
Yeah, and it's definitely hard sometimes. It's not always easy to do, to get to that sort of other plane of existing when you're not like questioning everything and worrying about everything. Like, I feel like I spend most of my time in that space just because we live in this world. But my art is actually really it just saves my life because it takes me out of that place and it puts me in a place of like trusting that intuitive knowledge and taking those leaps and thinking about our experience as human beings, as spiritual beings, and all of that stuff. And that, that sort of knowledge is really important to me, and my work allows me to explore those parts of who we are.
Yeah. I also had another question about if you could talk about who or what has been really critical or paramount in your development as an artist, and as well as the development of your ancestral awareness and knowledge.
Well, I mean, I'm like reconnecting with people in my family over the last 5 or 6 years that I did not grow up with. So that's been something really powerful for me to sort of learn a lot more about my history. And as far as my art practice, like, I feel like really reconnecting to all the women and people I've worked with all across the country have really informed how I think about these things, and my art practice, and their ideas and their creativity kind of informs mine. And it's and the elders I've been working with, the stories I've been learning, and those experiences of being out on the land with people who've been going out on that land for generations, and just like making those connections has been a huge help to me in making my work and informing my work.
Thank you. I have another question, and it has to do with your mediums.
Right.
You talk a lot about performance and your installation.
Mm-hmm.
And here what we're seeing is, the photography aspect, you're documenting, but
Yeah.
also the photography itself is also the work. So how did that have you always sort of used photography in that fashion, or is that something that just kind of came along with your practice, and now the photographic trace or memory or ephemera of your work exists as an artwork, or as it's a
Mm-hmm.
standalone, it becomes a standalone. But
Yeah.
again, it also is another form of, like you said, it's another trace, right? You're doing this layering where you're imprinting and
A trace. Yeah.
right? So it's kind of just another echo of the
Mm-hmm.
echo work that you've been doing through the layers. So I find that really interesting that you have that layering aspect. But all you're doing is you're not covering it, you're revealing things through that. So I don't know if you want to talk about how photography is worked into your practice.
Sure. Well, I think honestly, it's started out as almost utilitarian, like where like I said, this work for me has always really been about almost like private ceremony that I'm doing that helps me, but also can connect and relate to others, because it's reconnecting into that kind of a larger whole by doing that work as well. And it's really personal and like very intimate what I'm always doing out there, whatever it is I'm up to. And you can't always have people viewing that. Like, there's even something strange about people viewing that, honestly. But I think it's important for me to share the power of that intimacy and those sort of things that I discover about myself and ourselves as I do that work. And so I think photography sort of just jumped in there as a way to document what's really, I mean, you could look at it as performative, but it's very much in the moment and happening in the now. So, and just to document those moments is kind of how photography sort of ended up being part of what I was doing.
Okay. I'm just trying to see if there's another question I had that you haven't. You've done a very good job at answering a lot of my inquiries through your talk already.
Oh, cool.
I've got lots of great notes, but how do you? I mean, you've been working with the community. You work with communities on in your project, the REDress. Oh, I know what my question was. Before I know your work has been featured in the media, the REDress project. Do you want to talk about how the media has affected your project, or how is it?
That's really
just if you have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's a super interesting question because, like, I feel like that's a great question. And I feel like I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that because I think the media about the project has almost been as big as the project itself. And so it's really interesting to think about that relationship between the media and the work itself and like how that affected the work. But I haven't spent tons of time thinking about it, but it's like, it has been overwhelming, the amount of media I have had to do around this work. And yeah, it's definitely been, I mean, I could say, like, for myself personally, it's been really difficult to, keep up with all of that. And, and the media isn't always kind, and I feel like 10 years ago, there were, it was a lot more commonplace to, blame victims for, experiencing violence and things like that, where it's changed slightly, but, the narrative's not so different. Or maybe we're seeing kinder things, but it's sort of like veiled. So I think definitely the media can definitely change the quality of the work. And I feel like I spend lots of time thinking about the best way to connect with media and the story I need to tell them so that they don't kind of go off in directions with this that I don't feel are appropriate or responsible to others, and I feel like a very big responsibility to share this work in a good way. And so, it's been very important to kind of think about the ways in which I present and speak about the work to media.
Have you ever had to defend this work?
Very rarely. There have been a couple of people who've been triggered by it, and I say a couple because I think it's a couple. But I mean, if you're going through this kind of thing in your family, being reminded of it, is extremely emotional and triggering. So I mean, I can understand that for sure. And I even feel that way right now about all this stuff with residential schools. Is it's very triggering to have the public speaking about things that are happening to you and your family. So it's tricky. I've lost my train of thought because
that's okay. We were talking about media and how that is like potentially given you I was curious about whether that has empowered you or given you felt like it's supported you. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of both. I was just kind of curious because there is a fair bit of media on your work. So let's we can move on. We're actually kind of getting towards probably we're kind of summarizing and moving towards the end of our event tonight, but I just want to remind people if there's anything else you want to ask Jaime, and now is a good time. Just put it in the chats field.
Can I share Wendy?
Sure.
Can I share a link that people can?
Yes. Can you access the all under comments? You can put a comment in there that will leave and then I can put that on the screen. So if you add there, I can
I'm
put
looking
it.
for the link right now. Just give me a
Okay,
sec.
so if you go to the comment, if you're on, sorry people, this is all behind the scenes. If you're, do you see the comments up at the top? If you click on that, it'll bring a field in. It'll say all, and then you can type something in there,
Okay,
and then I can pull that out into the screen.
sure. Sounds good.
Okay.
Sorry, oh my goodness. I'm sorry. Maybe this was a bad idea. I feel like I can't find you now.
But if it's not going to work, it's okay too. So
yeah, okay. All right.
or maybe.
Where are we? Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'm just gonna throw it to you, Wendy, and then maybe you can share it up for me.
How are you throwing it to me?
In the chat.
Oh, in the chat. Oh, okay.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll put that right here.
I'm just sharing the link so everybody knows of we did a performance piece, myself and Casey Adams. She's an artist from this area as well, from Winnipeg. And she does a lot of clay pottery work. Now, after doing that Shards exhibition as well, she got into making actually clay pots the same way that the people made in this area. So she's learned the technique to do that. So her and I did a performance for that show. So it's all well documented on this link. So if you want to check that out, you can do that too.
Excellent. I was going to ask you technical pottery questions because that always stuff totally interests me, but you probably, it would be
mom,
maybe too much.
My mom is a potter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, as you know, too, where I'm currently located here in Treaty 4, the land is very clay-based. So we have a very strong history here. I'm not, and that's a good question for me to sort of look into, is how the Indigenous people use the clay resources for their stuff, for their work.
Yeah, absolutely. Super interesting. I heard too, I'll just share one quick story before we end. So people would make the vessels wherever they were camped, basically, and use those vessels for the time that they were there. And then when they left, they would leave them behind, which I think is so interesting. And I've been thinking about maybe collaborating with Casey with some of the works that she does, but leaving them, kind of photographing them as they disintegrate back into the land, which I find so interesting. And it's really like that to me is an example of, not accumulation, like how we understand accumulation of material things in our society, but it's just like a letting go and allowing things to go back to where they came from. Like, I feel like there's just so much there, and it's super amazing to think about. Because I mean, who wants to carry their dishes around, right?
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't either. Well, that's a really good story to add to the session, because it does speak about the relationship to the land. The clay is a part of the land. They leave it, right? You leave it with the land. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So I really want to thank you, Jaime, for sharing with us your practice and giving us a deeper insight to your methods and your knowledge and your experience, and how you are sharing it with us deeply. And I really am looking forward to being able to share your work with audiences in Regina, Treaty 4 territory. And also now we have this video that people can refer to when they want to learn more directly from you. They can always look back at this video or look to our video. So thank you so very, very much.
Yes, thanks so much for having me on. It was fun.
I'm just putting a little link in here as well for our audiences who feel so inclined, which we're really hoping you do, is to filling out just some feedback to us, to the Regina Public Library. This feedback is invaluable. It allows us to continue bringing these worthy artistic programs, cultural programs to you, and to broader audiences. So please take a moment to fill in that survey. It'll only take you like literally 20 seconds. So if you have the time. So again, thank you, Jamie. And I would like to see if I have anything else I have to add. Just a reminder to check out the Regina Public Library reconciliation page to see more programs that are being offered this month, as well as throughout the whole year. Keep looking back at that, as we have a strong commitment to that. So yeah, so thank you so much, and I hope you have a great night, and I hope your son was able to stay up for you to say goodnight.
Yes. Okay, good night,
Good
everybody.
night. Bye-bye.
Bye.